Thank you for tuning in to Business School, the official podcast of the Dan Roberts Academy.
Welcome to episode number 2 of the Business School podcast. Today, I'm joined by my very first guest, Marion Rabate, CEO and founder of the athletic leisurewear company, Ernest Leoty. Welcome, Marion. I haven't seen you in years. Nice to see you again. How are you?
Hi, great to see you again. I'm really good. It's really great to see you. Well, this is actually a virtual chat, but it's great to be, in touch again.
Yeah, now I first met you, I think it was before you set up Ernest Leoty, right? It was like just before.
Yeah,
It's
it
so
was.
exciting to see it grow and to see it do so well. So I know I haven't prepped you, so thank you for just doing this on the fly, but I wanted to pick your brain today regarding your brand, about the decisions you made, and just for people listening, just to hear from a real kind of like business owner, entrepreneur about your journey. So what we're going to do in this chat, I'm going to sort of split it into a couple of areas. The first part, I want to talk about your company and all the decisions, and then we're going to find out a bit more about you. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
So I know most podcasts start with saying, hey, tell us about your company, but I'm going to take a shot of explaining your company to you, how it comes to me.
Sounds great.
And then you can tell me how wrong I've got it. But the way I see it, it's a luxury athletic wear company with fashion. It's kind of illuminated by a rainbow of Parisian chicness around it, I would say. And it's high end, it's really cool. And I know my clients who wear like your leggings love it, and it's definitely going places. So I just think it's just a fantastic brand, and it's clearly on the up. And that's the way it comes across to me. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. I love the, rainbow of Parisian chic. That's like a great way of putting it. Thanks. I think it started very personally because I was working out and I couldn't find, athleisure wear and sportswear that I wanted to wear. Obviously, I'm French. I'm inspired by French fashion, and I wanted to create sportswear for women that have, that sense of style and Parisian chic, but that was still technical at the same time. So I think that's kind of the important side is that we're both chic and technical.
So where were you in your life when you decided to, was it initially just like a side project, or was it like, no, I'm going to quit everything and create this huge brand?
No. Well, when I had the idea, I was working in finance. So my background, I was working in finance for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned 30 and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Do I want to be in finance forever? The answer was no. I always loved fashion since I was like a kid, basically. And I wanted to do something that incorporated that. Plus, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I knew I wanted to have my own company for some reason since I was super young.
Why?
And why? I think, well, there's a number of reasons. I think it's because I never really liked having a boss, to be honest. I like to make my own decisions. I think that's the main driver.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that and I'm really happy today that I can make all my own decisions, and that sense of freedom, which I think you also have if you're a freelancer too, I guess, doesn't have to be, selling a product. It can be a service or anything. I think that's unique, and especially in today's world where we can work remotely, we can sell things digitally. That's really amazing. But to answer your question, I knew I was going to do it full time. I started working on it when I was still working in finance, but I could just never find the time. And then at some point I decided, listen, I need to like quit my job and do this full time. Otherwise it's never going to happen. And so yeah, that's what I did. I quit my job, but it took me a bit of time before I actually concretely started working on it, because it's one thing to have an idea and it's the second thing to take the first steps to, you know, I guess do make it move forward. At the beginning, well, at least me, I had no idea what I was supposed to do really.
So you kind of just learned as you went on, did you?
Yes, but it's not just that. It's more when you're an entrepreneur is where should I start? So I had this vision for, this massive company selling, all these, amazing products and selling online and in these, whatever in these regions. But the fact is, day one, what do? Do you start working on the legging? Do you start doing your website? Do you start thinking, how am I going to sell it? Like, there's so many things.
Mm.
And for me, the hardest when I started was kind of planning my time into what I was going to do first and in which order and all of that, I guess.
So how did you go about it then? So, I mean, I've got no idea about your industry. I mean, you have to get a designer for this, right? You're not a designer.
I'm not a designer, but interestingly enough, I ended up being the designer, but that wasn't my initial plan. No,
Yeah.
it's so actually the first thing I ended up doing was the designs and the products. But
Okay.
interestingly, it took me a while to find out that that's what I had to do. The first thing I actually did was talking to a lot of people in the industry. So you know how they tell you, oh, you need to go for all these coffees, and that's what I did with you, by the way. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, oh, I'm going to talk to, entrepreneurs or business owners or,
Just to
even
get a
people.
feel for
Yes,
the
exactly.
lay of the
And
land. Yeah.
I mean, I thought about it as, networking, but in some way, the most useful thing was when I met someone who actually told me, so can I see your products? And I was like, well, actually, that's a good point. Let me start working on the products. And that's when I met a designer
Mm-hmm.
and I did a number of things. I think my real breakthrough was when I met someone who used to work at Rafa,
Uh-huh.
which was the cycling brand.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's when it really started taking off because she had all the contacts with factories. She kind of knew what I was supposed to do and I didn't.
Okay.
So in that sense, I was lucky to meet someone who helped me with the first steps. Yeah.
Mhm. And you mentioned earlier on that your vision was to have this big brand. So that early on, you had like a dream of like where I wanted to be in like 10 years time.
Yes.
And has that vision changed since actually now you really are running a business and you see the not so glamorous side of being a business owner?
So the vision, which is great, has not changed at all. On the contrary, like I had this vision and it was very ambitious. And basically, my vision was to be the reference brand in luxury athleisure.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have that vision and I still think it's possible. And I feel like I had all these key milestones like, oh, I want to be at Selfridges or on Net-a-Porter, or I want to dress, like, I don't know, Beyonce or this or that. And we've hit all of these milestones, which is amazing. I think I just got incredibly lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I think and also, it's funny because even today, people are like, "Oh, are you sure you want to go for that?" So, for example, we're looking to do collabs, and I'm reaching out to Uniqlo, H&M, and I don't know, Louis Vuitton. I mean, massive brands, and people are like, "Well, isn't that a bit too daring or too much to us?" But whenever I think you have to be bold. I mean, at least that's my kind of opinion. Like if you don't ask, you don't get. And so far it's kind of worked. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that my vision has been confirmed. Interestingly, when I started, people were asking me, do you think um, women will be wearing leggings, every day as much as you're telling us? And it has proven correct, also
Yeah.
because of the pandemic and, the athleisure trend. So far, so good. But as you said, it is a struggle in the sense it is a lot of work and you have ups and downs all the time. It's definitely not plain sailing, but the long-term vision is still there.
Good. I'm pleased to hear it. And I think a lot of people, when they look at the idea of running a business or the concept of being an entrepreneur, seems quite glamorous. But it's very different from the reality is you end up usually working a lot more hours than you would in a normal job at a lot lower wage, particularly for the first few years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't pay myself for 3 years, and now I am paying myself, but kind of nothing, to be honest, just
Yeah,
enough
because you
to
don't want to pay
survive.
yourself loads because it's your baby. It'd be weird to take. Yeah,
Exactly.
so, yeah.
So I think for sure being an entrepreneur is much harder than working for a company, definitely. And what that means is that my advice is anything you do as an entrepreneur is something you need to be incredibly passionate about, because I don't feel when I'm working it just doesn't feel like work at
Mhm.
all. And I can tell you it wasn't the case for the 10 years I was working before. So I picked kind of an industry, and I love fashion, design, I love Instagram, I love wellness, I love all the Instagram influencers. So it's just a pleasure to do that. And given the number of hours of I'm working, I definitely wouldn't feel that way if it was about anything else. So
Yeah.
it's not, oh, let me pick something that I know, can grow or can make money. It's more, okay, what's my passion? And then how can I make a company out of it, if it at all makes sense, I guess.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I think also one thing about running a company is you have to wear lots of hats. So there are lots of jobs in there, and I know for me,
Definitely.
I run a company too, and it's like I don't like all the elements of it. I like most of it, but some things I don't like doing my accounts. It brings me no
It's so
joy.
funny you say that, because that's the thing I hate the most.
But you still have to do it. So I mean, as you grow, you can get people in to help you, but initially, for any young business, you do kind of the managing director has to do everything. Unless
Yes,
you're straight off
definitely.
the bat funded like a startup where you've got a huge injection of capital and you already have a team. But most businesses are not run like that. Most are kind of bootstrapped, like yours and mine were, and they grow
Definitely.
slowly. So also, I think you have to learn to do things you don't like, so you can do the things you do like.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, no, exactly.
so what I'm interested in, like your marketing and branding. I'm particularly interested in, just because I've always found it a really interesting subject. There's a real art and science to branding, and you've done something really interesting with your influencer marketing. Can we explore that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, because we didn't have any budget at all for marketing, and also I was following influencers and, obviously people on Instagram for years. And actually, that was a driver for me doing the company, because I used to work in finance, and my boyfriend was watching Bloomberg, which is kind of a software,
Mm-hmm.
in his bed, at like midnight. And me, I was always on Instagram watching influencers. And I was like, how can I work in finance and hate watching Bloomberg? And I spend my life on Instagram. So I was like, okay, I need to make a business out of it, basically. But the main point is we didn't have any money for marketing. And I know personally, obviously, one, I spend my life on Instagram, and two, my decision making for buying anything or really is either word of mouth. So my friends who would be like, oh, like, I bought this amazing legging, I love it, and seeing my friends wearing things or whatever, or influencers, Instagram. I
Mm.
mean, I say Instagram, it can be, physical influencer, anyone who has a sense of community, because I think people don't trust press, I think, as much as they trust individuals. And also it needs to be, yeah, it's about authenticity, personal recommendation, and curation too. So for example, if I go on a website, like a multi-brand website, I would only go on that website because I like their edit.
Yeah.
And it's the same with an influencer or someone you're taking recommendation from. For example, I love this girl style. I love, this website's edit. So basically we decided to basically gift our product
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of different people who we thought had a community that would be aligned with our customer base.
But correct
Um,
me if I'm wrong, you went for fashion influencers rather than fitness influencers, right?
Yeah, we did
Yeah,
because that was our angle, I
yeah,
guess, within the industry. Our angle was that we are chic, as you said, French chic, and so we wanted to target people who are more fashion oriented because we
yeah,
knew their customer base would be very sensitive to that.
yeah.
Whereas, fitness influencers, they're amazing, but there's a lot of brands that are already talking to them in that space anyway. So we didn't really have
Because
as
you're
much
high
as a
end as
niche.
well. Because you're high end, because you're pitched at high end of the market, it makes
Yes,
more sense
yes.
if
So
you're
there's
willing to
there's
spend money
another
on that.
brand that I really aspire not to be, but admire more, I guess, is the word, and it's Gymshark.
Hmm.
And obviously they're positioned much much cheaper than us, but they have done a great job at building an online community and seeding influencers, all of that.
I
But
mean,
as you
they were the
said,
first company to. I mean, they're an amazing company. How much they're worth now? What they've grown
I
so
think,
quickly,
yeah, they're crazy, they've grown so quickly.
and
But
that's been
as you said,
crazy influencer marketing, hasn't it? With like bodybuilders and physique models, they went really hardcore
yeah,
into that strategy, and I think a lot of other
exactly.
companies are copying them now because they had such quick success and they're so well
Yes.
known. Yeah,
And it's funny because I remember when we launched, and I had taken a French PR agency, and it's actually I had taken a French PR agency. They didn't want us to work with influencers because back then, but it's not that far away. It's 2018.
hmm,
They thought online influencers were not chic. So I don't know if you've seen Emily in Paris, the Netflix
yeah,
show,
yeah.
but it was exactly like that basically. It was like we were more the Anglo-Saxon British American mindset of, okay, let's go for influencers, and they were like, oh no, you need to be in Vogue and in Elle and this, and I was like, I don't think that's how
Old-fashioned
the
view,
world
isn't it?
works
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Also, with the, I mean, influencer marketing also has been a relatively new thing in the last few years, but also the type of marketing you do with influencers has changed for all of us. I mean, I think now the rise of micro influencers is more relevant, right? Right, because
Yes,
you've got a few million
definitely.
followers as an Instagram star, you start becoming like a celebrity, and then you lose the kind of common touch, as it were, and people believe it a bit less. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think if you've got millions of followers or even hundreds of thousands, I think for me, it's more that if someone has too many followers, their followers won't be all the same. There's going to be too many for different styles. Whereas
Yeah.
we're looking for people whose followers are our potential customers.
Hmm.
So it's much easier if it's more niche, if it's more segmented, and that will only happen if it's fewer of them. So just to give you an example, we've had publicity, unpaid all the time, by the way, from people like Emma Roberts, Jessica Alba, who've got millions of followers, but it hasn't done well at all. It hasn't converted, when in fact it's a yoga teacher who's got like 6K followers sells much better for us because her followers are actually the people who go to her yoga classes or do her yoga videos, and they really trust the person for that specific topic, which is yoga, I guess.
Yeah. And also with a small audience, you see they're not trying to be a celebrity. It's kind of more believable in a way. I would believe someone more
Yes,
6,000 followers saying, I love these leggings more than Kim Kardashian because I know she'd been paid for that post.
exactly. I think authenticity is key, whether it's when you're doing influencer marketing or when you're talking on your own channels. Like consumers, there's got so much choice because now we have access, first of all, to brands, everywhere worldwide, but also there's so many more brands because in a way it's easier to be a brand because now, you can sell digitally. So basically there's so much choice that consumers are not stupid. They'll know if you're authentic or not, basically.
And how about the press and PR side of things? So initially you didn't have a budget to get PR in these kind of big publications, but you have been in these publications. So what, did they happen organically, or did you get PR assistance?
No, it's funny you say that because we still don't have budget for PR. So, no, we do work with a PR agency, but what I've learned as a business owner, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is that you have to be an extremely tough negotiator. Like before I was scared of like asking for discounts or, oh, it's a 12-month contract. Well, please, can you just do it for us for 1 month? So now the way we work with PR is, yeah, we just work on a project basis. So for 1 month, and basically we do a massive push for 1 month, then we stop, then 6 months later we do another massive push, and then it ends up not being that expensive. We have tried to go direct, but it actually hasn't worked well at all for us. And it's much easier for us with a PR agency because they already have all the contacts. So
Yeah, true.
and it was the same with factories, actually, to be honest. When I said, oh, I met this Rafa person, she made all the intros. So my personal advice would be, don't try, and it might not be what most people say, but it's my personal view, is don't try and reinvent everything yourself. Go to someone who's really good at that, and you don't need to hire them, definitely not, but just either get them to do it for you for free, which we've had to ask so many favors from people, or hire them for 2 days, 1 day on a freelance basis, or a month if it needs to be a month, and get the maximum of what you can get in that time. And usually working with people on a project basis rather than just a retainer is much better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, because I mentor quite a bit, as you know, and a lot of companies I help, one of the biggest problems is they try and grow too quickly and they start employing people too quickly when they shouldn't really be employing, because it ties you down. So the more you can
Yeah,
do, get
definitely.
freelancers.
That's a big mistake we did, actually. When we launched, we were super lean. It was just me. Then I hired someone to help me, like a very junior person. And then our sales started doing really well. So I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to hire a team. And that was a massive mistake because it removes the freedom that, is what I said I wanted the most. And so I'm much more proponent. And so we had to actually let go some people, by the way. And so my advice is only work with people on a freelance basis if you need help, or try and do it yourself. But as I said, sometimes it's more time and cost efficient. So let's say you mentioned accounts, which is also the thing I hate the most, to work with an amazing accountant on a project.
Yeah.
And then you spend your time doing what you do best, which is, I don't know, business development, driving sales. I think as the founder, your focus should be always, how can I drive sales? Because at the end of the day,
I agree. I think it's easier. Actually, there's a company I'm working with at the moment, and the guy running it has come from more of an engineering background. They're selling a product, and he's really struggling with the sales and marketing. He wants to outsource that, and it's a new company. And my advice was like, no, you have to learn how to do sales and marketing if you're the MD. You can't outsource that, not at that early stage. You have to have an understanding of that world. It's too important.
It's funny you say that because I have an engineering background, and I also did that when I started. I didn't want to sell. When I started, I hated selling. It's against my personality, I guess. But then you just don't have a choice, as an entrepreneur. And now I start to love it because I see the impact it has on the sales if I do it myself.
Also, I think as you grow and as you get like a sales team or marketing team, you need to understand what works and understand your customers. And if you can't fully articulate that as the MD, I think it makes it very hard to grow in a cohesive way. So it makes sense for you to learn stuff now.
Completely agree. I think for two reasons. One, which is something you mentioned, that at the beginning as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to do everything yourself. And that's true. And even if you do have a team, you need to be able to understand what they're doing. Otherwise, you can't really evaluate them, I
Yeah,
guess.
true. Yeah.
And then two, I think sales is key also to, you mentioned branding, like, or product, my product will only be good if it sells to a certain extent. So there needs to be this feedback loop.
Mm. Yeah, true.
And for example, us with product, we get a lot of feedback when even customer service, like sometimes I do customer service, like responding to, oh, can you give me the tracking number of this and that? Because you learn so much from talking to your customers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good advice. Now, regarding branding, because yours is you've got a very well branded company.
Thank you.
How did you learn that? Or was that something innate, or did you study it? There's a
No,
lot.
not at all. But branding is, I think, innate in me, if I can. So I love branding. I nearly went to art school.
Okay.
And that's also why I wanted to, leave finance and do something more creative, because I am very creative, I guess, in that sense, and very visual. And that's
Yeah.
why I ended up doing the designs, the branding. So I'm kind of the creative director doing that side of the
Okay.
business. And that's what I enjoy the most. But yeah, I don't think you can also outsource that if you're doing a fashion brand in a certain extent,
No,
because
it
when
has to
you're
be your vision coming out, doesn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it change, like when you first had like a vision for like how things should look, be it like your website homepage or Instagram? Did that change, or was it quite clear and did you stick with it?
It hasn't changed either. It's been super clear from, because my vision was always to do the harness of activewear,
Okay.
but with Uniqlo prices. Actually, so I would
You're
say
not
the
Uniqlo
vision.
prices.
No, but that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to touch upon, which
Yeah.
is the aesthetics, the vision. None of that has changed, but a lot of things have changed since I started. One is the distribution model,
Okay.
and two is our price positioning. Because actually, when I met you and when we launched, we started with extremely high prices because that was my vision.
Mm-hmm.
And we've actually had to completely reprice, because what we found was that if we were pricing too high, our the product wasn't selling, basically. So that's one. So kind of the question was, how luxury can you be within the athleisure activewear market? And what we found out was, people won't pay for leggings for more than like £150. I mean, some people will, but it's not going to be a lot of people. And
Yeah.
because you wanted to scale, so we actually reduced the prices of our leggings from 150 to 65, 70 for some of the leggings.
Okay. That is, I mean, I don't know the full price of leggings. That doesn't sound super cheap to me. Is that mid? That's still positioned quite high, isn't it, in the market? Or is it not? Is that mid level?
No, I think it's mid-level.
Is it?
Yeah.
Depends who you compare
It's
yourself to.
yeah, I think it's what I would describe as, yeah, I would describe it as mid-level. So if you look at other online brands, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Girlfriend Collective,
Yeah.
things like that, we're aligned with them. We're slightly cheaper than Lululemon, for example.
Are people like Sweaty Betty and Lululemon, are they direct competitors, or do you see them in a different way?
They're our main competitors, but more in the sense that our customer will buy, 5 leggings. She'll have a lot from Lululemon, one
Yeah.
from Sweaty Betty, one from Nike, and one from us, maybe. But obviously, our aesthetic is completely different because we're coming at it from the fashion angle.
So do you think it's people so are you advertising to people who have already got leggings and but they want something a little bit more high, a bit more fashionable,
Yes,
go in their collection?
exactly. It's a mix. So it can either be someone who, especially with lockdown, it's helped, someone who wants a comfortable pants or whatever, trouser, I don't know what you want to call it, to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And, they'll go with, for example, a black legging that we're selling. Or it's someone who works out a lot, has other leggings, but thinks that ours are better looking.
Okay.
And actually, the other thing is once they do try it, they also realize the fabrics are also really good. And then that's when they become more addicted to them because they see a difference in the quality.
Yeah, my client Rachel, who I saw this morning, she was wearing a pair of your leggings. She was
Are you
raving about it.
serious?
She was so
That's so
excited.
great.
She was so excited about
Oh,
it.
I love,
Raving
that's the
about how
most
yeah.
fun part is when we get the customer feedback.
Yeah. So with your I'm interested in your pricing strategy because I changed the price of one of my products recently, and I kind of ummed and ahed about it because it's quite hard when some people if a lot of people have already bought your leggings and suddenly you lower the price. Doesn't that annoy people who've already bought them at a high price?
No, that's a great question because when I did it, I was extremely cautious about doing it. But
Yeah.
actually, I think there's another strand to it, which is when we started, we launched a lot wholesale. So we were selling a lot through department stores, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're selling mainly through our website.
Okay.
And what that changes, I don't know if you've heard the concept of, well, I guess everyone has pivoting, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're doing a startup, you shouldn't be scared about just making brash changes. Nothing, first of all, is irreversible. And yeah, also, actually, when you have a website, we're always like, oh, let's do this product or send this newsletter. And then we're like, oh, but we did it a year ago. But then, I'm like, well, yeah, but a year ago, we had completely different customers than, who we're selling to today. So I think the way you should, at least, for websites, you should think about it more as, okay, I'm targeting a completely new audience today. Who knows
Yeah.
who's going to go on my website? It's not the same person who was on there yesterday necessarily.
I think you brought up
So
a really important point as well, being lean, and that kind of lean startup mentality which you guys have makes it so much easier to pivot and be agile. And it's like, I know one of my friends has a luxury Italian footwear company, quite small, but they opened their first shop on Bond Street a month before COVID happened, and it
oh wow, poor them.
it's like mess them up. And it's like, because you can't pivot from that, you're just screwed with all that capital in there. So doing
Exactly.
online sales like Gymshark famously have done and like you guys are doing just means you can change with the times. You don't have to have huge overheads.
Well, that's what we know when we're talking about freedom is like you shouldn't tie yourself, at least in the beginning, to anything if you don't need to. And who knows, obviously we all lived a pandemic, no one would have expected that. But
Exactly.
anything can happen and you need to be prepared to change. And also when you're an entrepreneur, it is your agility which gives you an edge, because otherwise, Lululemon, Nike, everyone else, they've got massive budgets, so you're not going to be able to compete on that side of things. You need to compete by proposing either something which is much more innovative or being agile, responding to what you can see in the market or a demand. Or I'll give you an example.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
With the pandemic, we started doing these Instagram lives. But we did them literally 1 week after, they announced lockdown. And then, 3-4 months later, all the big brands started doing them. And that's when I was like, oh shit, like now, they're doing it. And so that's why you always need to be doing something a bit different than everyone else, I guess.
And as a small company, also, like you're saying, how you occasionally deal with customer service stuff, because you're a small company, it's actually easier to stay close to the customer and adapt. Where bigger companies, one of the bigger problems have when you start having like 10, 15 employees, excuse me, that kind of size, is that the MD becomes a little bit removed from the end customer. And that's when the bigger companies often are too slow, because the MDs haven't got a clue who the customers are, because the MDs are just looking after their board. They're not looking after the actual end customer.
Oh, exactly. And there's this saying in business, the customer is key. And that's So true. I've watched a master class. I don't know if you know master class, the online
Yeah, the Facebook.
platform.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen a couple.
There's one from the founder of Spanx,
Oh yeah.
and she explains her story. And she says she launched the product, she sold it in like Nordstrom or like a department store. And then she went as a salesperson in the store, which she wasn't supposed to because obviously she doesn't work at Nordstrom, every day. And she was like pretending to be a salesperson and just
Really?
talking to the customers all the time. And she says that's how, especially in the beginning when you're launching your product, that's when you can make the changes you need to make to your product. Because another big thing is we launched the product, but we actually made a lot of changes to them over the past 2-3 years as we got customer feedback like, oh, it would be great to have like an adjustable strap, or oh, like, the crotch here needs to be like 1 centimeter lower or whatever, like.
Hmm. I think we've already talked about this, but I want to kind of recap a little bit on the proudest moments you've had so far in your entrepreneurial journey, and also the biggest mistakes you've made. So let's start off with the proudest moments first.
I think the proudest moments, there's not one that I can think of. I think I I was extremely happy when I got called by Matches and Selfridges to sell my product. Like, we didn't call them, they called me. And that's one of the milestones I had. And I was like, okay, maybe in 5 years. And it actually happened really quickly. And then I was like, oh, this is amazing. So it's
That's
kind of
cool.
like
Yeah.
a stamp of approval in
Yeah.
that way. But it's also when I meet someone and I ask them, and I say, oh, I work, I'm the founder of Ernest Leoty, blah blah, and they're like, oh, I love that brand. How you said, your customer Rachel, that feels amazing. But so that's when I'm the happiest.
What about
um
biggest mistakes you've made?
I've made so many.
Overall, and I think there's one thing worth highlighting. Like I know I've made many too. Every business owner I know, you have to make, you kind of, in a way, a mistake is not making enough mistakes. It's how you learn, right? As long as they don't destroy your company, mistakes,
Yes,
how we grow and how lessons are really implanted in our brains.
definitely. But I think the key with mistakes is to be able to recognize them early and to act on them.
Mm.
Because if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, or if you know you've made a mistake but you don't change it, then so I guess
Yeah,
it's the
I've
same with
started in the wrong
life, by
place.
the way, not just business.
No, it's true though. But running a business is like the lessons I think you learn, lessons I've learned running a business have been lessons which kind of like transcend business, about patience,
Yeah,
simplicity,
definitely.
ambition, goal setting, relationship building. All the things I've learned being a managing director are things which have helped me as a man, as a person.
Definitely. It's really helped me a lot in the rest of my life too, for sure. I think for me, it's the two areas it's helped me is one in my relationships, because at the end of the day, building a business is about forming relationships. So basically, whether it's, attracting the right team, getting along with them, basically the team aspect of it, and then more the business development aspect of it. It's all based on relationships, and also about being bolder. You stop, I mean, at least me, I stopped being scared. Like before, I was like, oh, I'm scared to go and talk to Matches. I remember the first time I met them, I
So you've
was like,
become bolder and more confident, have you, in the last few years?
definitely, I used to be super shy.
Oh, you're not shy now.
So it's helped me. But in terms of mistakes, I would say the biggest mistakes I've made, and they're really business mistakes, and I'll just list them because I think it's helpful. One mistake I made, which was a very big mistake, I feel, is we started working with French factories. So actually, I wanted to be the Herès and Hermès of activewear.
Mhm.
So I started building, yeah, I worked with super expensive French factories, and actually it used to cost us um, tons and tons of money to make a legging, and I would actually sell it with more or less no margin, sometimes at a loss.
Wow.
And that was a massive mistake because we basically poured money into something that was loss making.
Why did you do that?
Because we obviously they work for these other brands. So the way we thought about it was I mean, there is a barrier to entry when you start in activewear, which is you need to pay surcharges when you have small volumes.
Yeah.
So as your volumes grow, the factories decrease their prices.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I was thinking about it back then was, well, I'm gonna kind of stick it out for 2 years. And then once I have bigger volumes, it will be better. But so my advice is the first investment you make needs to be profitable.
Good advice.
It's the same as, my brother opened a cafe in London, and he was loss making in the beginning too, but you hear it a lot. Oh, in the beginning you're going to be loss making and then you'll make money, but actually I'm not sure it's the right way to
I
go
think it
about
also
it.
depends what kind of business. I think if you're in a highly scalable IT startup, like an app, then it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Then
Yeah.
it's okay to be in debt for a few years. But yeah, if you're a sort of physical product or even like a service, like I sell services, being in debt does not make much sense.
Exactly. And then the second big mistake I made was, I think I was very cheap when I started. So I always wanted to, let's say I worked with, I don't know, an accountant or a PR agency or whoever. I would always go for the cheapest. And that, in fact, you need to go with the best, obviously, and negotiate as much as you can. But I do think there is a saying, and it works for your team or whoever, pick the right people, don't pick the cheapest, basically.
Same as in fashion, buy crap, buy twice. It makes sense to have one good
Yeah.
pair of jeans, rather than 4 really bad pairs.
No, but actually, just to go back, because you asked me about the branding, I didn't draw the logo myself, obviously. So I had a graphic designer do it, and I hired, first of all, a very cheap graphic designer. They did a logo, and I hated it. And then I had to ask a new expensive one to redo it. So it's exactly that
I
same
went through the
story.
same thing. I went through the same thing. Yeah, stuff like that you have to pay for. All right, I want to ask a little bit about you now. So do you like the world of like business and entrepreneurship? Are there certain kind of business leaders, or are there certain, I don't know, business writers or business leaders out there which you really admire? You mentioned Hermes as a company, but are there any actual entrepreneurs out there you look up to?
I mean, there's a lot. I love Emily Weiss from Glossier. Obviously, I've never met her, but I follow her on Instagram. I'm just really inspired by the vision she had of creating, this digital community, creating an amazing brand. And what I think is unique about what she did is she created something extremely aspirational but cheap. So I'm actually, wearing the Glossier mascara, and it costs like £10. It's not super expensive, but the branding, I feel, is very luxury.
Okay.
On the business side, I wouldn't say it's, big famous people. Like if you say, oh, Steve Jobs or this or that, of course I really, like them. But I think it's more people around me. I think, you're a mentor yourself, but it's important to have mentors. You definitely can't do it well, at least I don't think so. I think it's very difficult to do by yourself. So I have personal mentors who are people that I met throughout my journey and who have become mentors, and that I can, call like, hey, I've got this problem. What do you think I should do, basically?
How do you find a mentor? How do you go about it?
I don't think you necessarily do it in a conscious way. It's not like, oh, can you be my mentor?
It's more like you just ask advice from someone who you admire,
Yeah, it's more
and a
like you
relationship
meet
builds.
someone and you click. Because I mean, I'm not thinking about who my mentors are. And, I have, 5 to 10 people I can call or text or whatever and say, hey, or go for coffee, like, hey, I've got this, that. But I never officially thought about them as mentor. It's more people with who you click, and
Yeah.
then you ask for advice, and then it kind of becomes a natural thing.
Hmm.
At least that's how it's worked for me, maybe. But
I mean, I've never had a mentor, even though I mentor. I've never had a proper mentor myself, and I wish I had. Now I feel a
you
bit.
can still get one.
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking. Where do you find them? Because it's like,
But
um,
you must have
there's
mentors.
people like over certain things of my business where I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? But not someone who I do what I do with people, where I go through the entire business and break it down and build a strategy. And
Oh, I see what you're saying, but I don't have that either. And I don't think, yeah, that's more of a formal mentor. I
yeah,
don't have someone that I meet, once a month and like, okay, let's go through your
yeah,
business and this and that. It's more, okay, I have, like, I want to, I don't know, expand into the US. I call someone, hey, do you can you help me, what are your thoughts, this, that, or branding or production or that. But sometimes as an entrepreneur, what you need the most help on, I feel like, is more the emotional side of it, like to
mm.
manage the ups and downs, like,
That's really
oh my
interesting. You
god.
brought this up actually, because I think it's often not talked about, but it's definitely like people who are successful, I think, in business, that they understand the up and down journey, because it's not like you have good weeks and bad weeks. Particularly as you grow, you have good hours and bad hours. Like in a given day, you could have the best news and also some bad news, and it's learning to cope with that. Is I think
Yeah.
takes practice. I mean, I find for myself, I used to get quite excited when I got like a big new client. I'd get really happy, and then if someone or if I lost a partnership or something bad happened, I'd get really sad. Now I'm kind of more middle of the road, because I expect to have ups and downs in my work, in my finances. So it doesn't, now my emotions don't go up and down that much. Generally, I'm pretty happy. But if something really bad happens, I'm like, yeah, something good will happen tomorrow.
Yeah,
A bit more chilled
exactly.
about it. And I think it's
I
just an
think when there's
experience.
something really bad happening, I remember at the beginning I would get so um you know
But it takes over
anxious
your
when
life. Yeah.
something, I would take it, so yeah, I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen, we're gonna go bankrupt or this or that. But after it's happened like 3 4 times, you're like, okay, this is normal, this is part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and while you mentioned, like, I like what you're saying about having like people being inspired by people around you, as opposed to like the Jeff Bezoses or the Elon Musks and the Steve Jobs. But having said that, looking at those guys, and when you sort of study them, which I'm a sort of fan of as well, you do see that people like what's his name, Musk, he's like nearly failed so many times, and like to actually see the
It's
personality
funny.
is
It's
interesting.
funny you mention him, because I really do admire him. And I always get really inspired by the fact that he nearly went bankrupt and he had to get a mortgage from his like father-in-law or
Well,
something
he
like
slept,
that.
even when he sold PayPal, he like, and they made all that money, he invested all of it, and he was crashing on people's sofas. He like
Exactly.
so many
So
risks.
that's,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, if something like that happened to him, then the fact that it's happened to me means, it happens to the best, basically.
Well, same as Richard Branson, like Virgin Atlantic was like this close to going bust so many times, and he was this close to being bust so many times. And it's like, so I think you're right. When you see that even the most successful business owners out there had times where they're this close away, it's not purely about skill and hard work. There is luck involved. And there are times when you're going to be a bit unlucky, like a pandemic happening, for example, which has affected so many businesses. And you can't just let that defeat you. You have to kind of, shake yourself off and just keep on going.
Yeah, but I think the key skill of an entrepreneur is resilience.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with luck, because I know some people say, oh,
But there is, I
you
mean, there is good and bad luck, surely. But it's how you
I
deal with
don't believe I
it.
don't
Really?
believe
Oh,
in luck.
okay.
So I don't think someone's going to be really lucky and someone is going to be really unlucky. I think, and actually,
So
health and
Marion,
sports.
you were being very modest earlier then when you said you've just been lucky. You said that at the beginning of this chat.
No, so I'll give you an example. I've been extremely lucky. Luck happens in the sense I was lucky that they called for the product, for example,
Yeah.
like matches and Selfridges, for sure. But I was unlucky with a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, it's a balance, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that. And it's also how thing is, you can't control, you can only control things when you're direct control. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm with you. I think we agree. What else do I want to say? I kind of want to just finish off. I know this has been quite a long chat. Thank you so much for your time today. Just showing, because the people listening to this podcast, the people who probably have their own business, small business, and they're thinking about setting up their own business. And they've been hearing your very candid and honest advice, which has been super interesting, and I'm super grateful. But is there any kind of passing ending comments about taking that leap from when you have a secure job to then wanting, like you did, having a dream to do something else, but they're a bit scared about losing that income, losing that security? How do you know if that leap is the right move or not? What should you think about? What did you think about?
I'm very intuitive, so it's more about the gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it's the right move, then you'll feel it, first of all. I think the second point is there is no right or wrong, in the sense nothing is irreversible. You can try, and then, especially in today's world, you try, and then if after 1 month or 1 year or even 10 years you feel like, okay, this is wrong, then you go back to where you were before.
Yeah.
So
What's the worst that can happen, right?
exactly. I think
Yeah.
you need to take it as it goes, and if it doesn't, mistakes are great. We discussed, you learn from them and then you become a better person. And it's the same with taking a risk, like starting something. If you don't start, you'll never know. But at the same time, there needs to be a reason or a spark behind it that really makes you want to do it. It's not, okay, let me try to be an entrepreneur because it's trendy. It's more, okay, I'm really passionate about this and I'm thinking about it all the time, and that's why I'm going to do it.
No, I think that's really good advice. I mean, and you said earlier about you had this passion, this vision. If you just want to be a business owner because you like the idea of being a business owner, that's not a compelling reason to get up at 5 a.m. and to stay up late at night doing your accounts.
Exactly. I've done so many of those.
All right, wonderful. Look, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. And
yeah, thanks to you.
no, good luck with everything. And hopefully I'll talk to you face to face at some point rather than
Yeah,
on Zoom.
definitely. That would be great. Thanks a
All right,
lot.
thanks. Bye. So that was Marion Rabate, CEO, founder of Ernest Leoty, the leisurewear company. You can find out more about the company and maybe buy some leggings as a show of support at ernestleoty.com. Now, I do hope you found that episode interesting. I do hope you took some inspiration from that. I found it very inspiring. In a very quick space of time, she's grown this brand, this company from scratch, and it's in every magazine. She's got all kinds of superstars wearing it. They're a great company. And it's because she's had a great vision and she's worked really hard. Now, as you heard, she had to learn a little bit on the go. There's some things she didn't like at first, like the sales and marketing. She had to learn that. She had to make mistakes like many of us do. But her vision stayed true and she stayed strong to her vision. And that's how you get success. Be clear what you want, but be flexible in how you get there. Okay, so next week, it's a shorter episode. What you'll find is that some episodes are very short, like 15 minutes. Some go up to like 3.5 hours. I think there's one about 4 hours, which is going to come on at some point. But I like that. The fun thing about running a podcast, particularly one like this, where we're kind of going in depth, is that I don't have to stick to any particular rules. I just want to talk to interesting people and get as much information as I can out of them, because I know, one, it's interesting. These are the kind of conversations I'd like to have anyway, but I'm sure you'll get more out of it the more in depth we get. So I do hope you enjoy this podcast. Please do share with friends. It means a lot. The more people who listen to it and download, the more time I can put into it. At the moment, I'm going to do once a week episodes. I'll review after a few months. If it goes really well, I'll do them more often. So yeah, give me some feedback. Any kind of reviews on iTunes are really appreciated, but any feedback is welcome. And tune in next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Business School, the official podcast of the Dan Roberts Academy. To find out more about how we help coaches, instructors, and fitness entrepreneurs upskill and enjoy more success, please see danrobertsgroup.com or follow us on Instagram at the Dan Roberts Academy.